Hi, my name is Jennifer Matos. I'm the Executive Director of the Noah Webster House in West Hartford Historical Society, and I'm bringing you the 20th edition of our Armchair Tour of West Hartford history. Now, I know you've all heard of Katharine Hepburn, the famous American actress and Hollywood star, and you may even associate her with Old Saybrook, Connecticut, where she had a family estate in Fenwick. But did you know that the Hepburn family actually also lived in West Hartford, Connecticut? I'm very fortunate today to be filming this video right here in the backyard of the Hepburn home. It was located on Bloomfield Avenue, approximately across from the entrance to the University of Hartford. And I want to give a shout out to the owners of this house for generously allowing us to film on location today. So the Hepburn family actually had this house built in 1927. They moved in 1928. And at that point, Katharine Hepburn, the actress, was about 21 years old, and so she was already pursuing her career in film and on stage. And she wouldn't have lived here full time, but she certainly came to visit the house frequently. And she actually held her wedding here in the backyard that I'm standing in. In 1928, she married a young businessman. I'll give you a little spoiler, the marriage didn't work out. They divorced in 1934. And she actually never married again, but she had a very long-term relationship with the actor Spencer Tracy. So as interesting as Katharine Hepburn, the actress, is, I'm more interested in talking about her mother, who was also named Katharine Hepburn. So the mother's name was Katharine Martha Houghton Hepburn, and she was born in the 1880s in Buffalo, New York. She was the heiress of the Corning glass fortune. She experienced a lot of tragedy as a young woman. Her father committed suicide when she was only 14 years old, and then her mother tragically died a year later of cancer. So that left Katharine, who was the oldest of three girls, kind of in charge of the family. And I'm going to call her Kit throughout this video. That was how she was known to her family and friends. So Kit actually attended Bryn Mawr College, where she graduated in 1899 with a degree in history and political science. And then the following year, she graduated with a degree in chemistry and physics, and it was a master's degree. So she's a very highly educated woman for her time. Imagine women having a bachelor's degree was rare enough, let alone one in science and a master's degree. So she was very well educated, and her sisters were as well. She was visiting one of her sisters who was studying at Johns Hopkins University when she met her future husband, Thomas Hepburn. So Thomas was studying to be a doctor. They got married in 1904, and they moved to Hartford because Thomas had a residency at Hartford Hospital. He would go on to be a urologist at Hartford Hospital for 50 years. It was a very successful career. So they came to the Hartford area and they began to start a family, and Kit found herself as a young mother and housewife and wanted to do more. So she actually got involved in some social reform, and the first cause that she took up was the cause of women's suffrage. So in 1909, she actually co-founds the Hartford Equal Franchise League. And in 1910, that organization was absorbed into the Connecticut Women's Suffrage Association, and that was part of the National American Women's Suffrage Association. In 1913, Kit is the president of the Connecticut Women's Suffrage Association, and she actually has a one-on-one meeting with the President of the United States, Woodrow Wilson, to talk about the importance of women's suffrage in America. Now, in 1917, she kind of had enough of the association. It wasn't quite aggressive enough for her, so she actually resigns as president and joins the National Woman's Party, which is a suffrage organization run by Alice Paul, and it was known for having an aggressive reputation of getting things done. Alice Paul later in an oral interview said that Hepburn was the unquestioned leader of the suffragists in Connecticut. So Kit Hepburn certainly played a very important role in the suffrage movement in Connecticut and also nationally. So the National Woman's Party was able to get the 19th Amendment created, and in 1919 it passed through Congress, and then it took about a year for it to be ratified. And this is more poignant than ever because we're in August of 2020. It's the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment being ratified and going into law in the United States of America, and we can thank Kit Hepburn for playing a role in that. Now, after women get the right to vote, and this is something she had spent at least 10 years working on, she gets involved in the birth control movement. And she herself was the mother of 6 children. Katharine Hepburn, the actress, was actually her second child and the oldest daughter. But she had 6 children over the span of 16 years. And so she knew what it was like to be the mother of many children. And she was living in a household that could afford the children. And her heart really went out to families, especially immigrant families and poor families who couldn't afford to have children. And she really wanted them to have the opportunity to have that choice. And so she gets together with Margaret Sanger, whom you'll be familiar with as a leading birth control advocate. So Margaret Sanger actually had grown up near where Kit grew up, and so she knew her as Kit Houghton from the Corning childhood. And together they founded in 1921 the American Birth Control League, and this was actually the forerunner to Planned Parenthood. Now, some of Kit Hepburn's ideas did not sit well with her neighbors here in West Hartford or in Hartford or in Connecticut as a whole. The Hepburns were known as being a very progressive family. You could come here for a dinner party and talk about things that would never be acceptable conversation in other households in the area. She actually gave speaking engagements, including one at Carnegie Hall. And she spoke throughout the state, and her speeches were not always popular. There were some pretty nasty editorials written about her in the Hartford Courant, and occasionally someone would throw a brick or a stone through the windows of this beautiful house I'm standing in front of. So it took a toll for her publicly, but she was very committed to making a difference in the lives of women across the United States. So although we think of the Hepburns, we think of Katharine Hepburn, the actress, I wanted to remind you that there's another Katharine Hepburn equally as important, if not more important, in the role she played in really changing the lives of women. And really, we stand on the shoulders of her work, right? We today benefit from all of this hard work that she did back in the early 1900s through the 1920s. So I hope you learned a little something new today, and we'll see you next week for our next Armchair Tour.